All right, hello and welcome to another Expert Inside interview. My name is John Golden from Sales Pop, online sales magazine, and Pipeliner CRM, joining you as usual from a sunny San Diego. And today I'm delighted to be joined from the other coast by Andrew Russell, who is in New York. How are you doing, Andrew?
How are you, John?
Good. So Andrew isn't just a mortgage industry veteran, he's a trailblazer who turned a leap of faith into a top 10 mortgage empire, armed with a master's degree in psychology and an unshakable passion in helping others. Um, you have proven that a path to success is paved with resilient strategy and a deep understanding of the human connection. You launched RCG Mortgage in 2017, and what began as a three-person team has grown into an industry powerhouse, 40 plus employees, earning accolades, broker of the year for 3 consecutive years and top 10 mortgage broker. Uh, but your mission, Andrew, goes beyond closing loans. You're trying to empower professionals to thrive in their careers without sacrificing their humanity. So, um, let's face it, the work culture that most of us grew up in, I mean, I'm originally from Ireland, but like I've been in the States like 27 years. And when I, came over here, the work culture that most of us have grown up in, I don't think humanity was something that was talked about much. It was more like work as hard, work as much, always be on, always be going, all of that. And, which obviously leads to burnout and stress eventually. So what is your how did you decide that you were going to approach things differently, and what did that look like when you started?
Yeah, so burnout, I mean, you talk about some of this entrepreneurial fever. I think there's something, and it's kind of been proven deep in the entrepreneur, where, like, I could tell you how I grew up, John. I grew up big sports environment. I mean, I'd say, do I look Irish to you? Some people say I look like, if I don't smile, like a Russian hitman, but that's neither here nor there. But so I look like a manly man, right? But ultimately, if I got a flat tire, I don't know how to change it. I don't even know how to spackle that wall back there. If there's it, like, I'm not the guy to call. I'll pay someone to fix it. But I grew up in the sports environment. A lot of baseball, football in
Mhm.
college. And what did we learn in the Russell household growing up? Second place is first loser. That was kind of, yeah, but that was kind of embedded in my brain. So it went from a burnout perspective. I don't know if I necessarily struggled with burnout, only because many entrepreneurs, if not most, it's kind of been proven that they just have this fever where until they've kind of made it to the top of the mountain, even if they're second, third, fourth, 10th, to your point, it's just nothing will get in your way. And even when you're first, it's like, all right, well, where else am I lacking? You just have like that incessant, always burning fever to succeed.
Yeah, so I mean, so with that, it can be very easy, obviously, to lose sight of a lot of things, and as you said, I mean, one of the things that you want to do is like, help people to be able to succeed without losing their humanity. I feel like that sometimes because so laser focused and so always striving for the next thing that it's very easy to push your humanity aside.
Yeah, when you run a business, it's a lot of X's and O's, especially in the mortgage business. It's, the amount
Mhm.
of calls, the amount of relationships, and it gets very, objective and, to your point, not humanly. So, like, culture is a very big thing now. And we're really, really hyper focused, extremely hyper focused on culture, celebrating, giving gratitude, enjoying the journey. Because at the end of the day, you losing your humanity is, I could take a step back. So our team, we are going to do 1 billion in production. We're tasked with
Mhm.
this. It's a big, big, big vision goal, and it'll make us super, super top in the industry. But we will get there. I can tell you that, John, without a doubt. We talk in another 1 to 2 years, I'll be there. But I have two choices. I'm either going to get there and enjoy it, or throughout the journey, I'm going to be stressed out, frustrated, all that stuff. So we are just collectively making sure we're inclusive of the humanity, enjoying the journey, because it always seems to be we get there. Whatever I put my mind to in the past, I always seem to be able to accomplish it. But throughout the journey, I stress myself out. There are times that it's not enjoyable, and we're really trying to do a 180 there. having confidence and gratitude in the journey to not lose the humanity of it all.
Yeah. How do you go about that? Because I agree with you. I think a lot of times, we miss out on the journey, on the experience, and sometimes the journey is the best part. Sometimes even getting to the destination doesn't turn out to be as great as the journey to get there. But so how are you able now to try and embrace and enjoy the journey as opposed to just try and get it over with as fast as you can?
Yeah, I think that in a journey, if you break it down, if you have a big vision goal, you kind of got to reverse engineer certain milestones within it and celebrate those. It's a lot easier if you're climbing to the top of the mountain, if you chunk that mountain into 10 different pieces. It's the same thing. So I'm a big guy, I like to do sprints. I hate long distance. So,
Mhm.
like this, John, this 10,000 step rage, right? Do
Yeah.
10,000 steps, do that over time. And I'll lose some of this baby weight I gained when I had kids,
Mm.
figuratively, of course. But it's the same thing. 10,000 steps is a royal pain in the butt, especially in New York. You're obviously in Cali, New York, when it's cold. I just did 75 hard. It was brutal. But if you
Yeah.
break that 10,000 step into chunks, 2,000 or 2,500 steps, it's a lot easier. So if you do the same thing in business and then you celebrate that along the way, it makes you excited for the next milestone, and it makes it seem more achievable. Instead of saying, hey, I want to do 200 loans, whatever that amounts to a month, right? As an example, say, hey, this is where we are. Let's get to 80 loans a month. Let's get to 120. And as you go along the journey, celebrate it, because we're always going to ascend the mountain. It's just if you start with the end in sight, which it seems almost insurmountable or impossible to get to. I have just found, and this is all trial and error. It sounds great what I'm
Mhm.
saying. I've made all the mistakes, years back, where I had big, big, dreams and visions, and I get very frustrated if I don't hit them very quick. So I've learned, to the point before, to enjoy the journey, but more so to break it down into, bite-sized chunks, and then celebrate and enjoy and have gratitude for each as we kind of hit those.
Yeah, and I think those are great points, and I think absolutely, breaking it down, because you're right. I mean, if you have a big audacious goal, if you're so fixated on that, you tend to focus on how far away you
BHAG,
are.
big, hairy, audacious goal.
Yeah, yeah. But you tend to focus on how far away you are if you're not breaking it down. And the other thing too is celebrating, those milestones, because yeah, I think we're so fast to move on and to want to get to the next thing, that taking a moment out to celebrate a milestone can make all the difference. Otherwise you are just in that kind of hamster wheel of like stressing all the time, of just trying to keep everything going. Um, so and I think it's a great thing, because those celebrations don't have to be extravagant, right? I mean, an acknowledgement oftentimes is enough.
Yeah, we like scoreboards. I'm a big
Hmm.
football guy, so I mean, and nowadays with AI, who even knows? I think you can like have them build code for an app in 30 seconds. So I'm sure,
Hmm.
Greg, who runs our marketing side, is probably working on some crazy apps for us. But at a minimum, we have a scoreboard. As we hit certain numbers, we celebrate it, because we're oftentimes visual creatures, us
Yeah.
humans. So just seeing it, it's kind of exciting to see the growth.
Hmm. And then, how do you, with your team, especially when you set big goals like that, like how do you motivate them to stay focused, to stay engaged on the journey, to be able to do what you're doing, like to enjoy the journey as it goes along?
Yeah, we do it in a multitude of ways. I think it's really consistency and meetings. So getting the team together, we have a sales huddle weekly. Within that sales huddle, it's more like, all right, this is the start of the week. This is the expectation, and then some kind of motivation. We're big into motivated versus discipline. That's been very big. The difference of motivation versus discipline, of course. Motivation is you wake up, it's a beautiful day like it is today on a Monday. You're like, I'm going to slay the week. Next thing you know, you wake up on Wednesday, you didn't have the best night's sleep Tuesday, maybe your 8-year-old was up in the
Mhm.
middle of the night for whatever reason. It's a rainy day. Are you going to do the thing on Wednesday morning? On Monday, it was easy when you were
Mhm.
motivated, but Wednesday is discipline. So we find that, 1% is motivation, 99% is discipline. So we're really pushing that into the team to stay disciplined to the journey, which is never exciting. It's never sexy, but discipline is really what gets it done. So that's our Monday our huddles with our group. Wednesday is more like high level. What's the business plan? How are we going to execute on it? And then Friday is the week recap, which is the successes, the struggles, and the suggestions. And we're very consistent. We never miss these meetings. So the team feels culture. They feel like they're not at this alone. I'm leading by example, because which is obviously big. You need someone out there to do it as well. It can't just be me screaming from the mountaintops,
Right.
hey, do this, and not doing it myself. So that's what we found has been very successful.
Yeah, and then obviously, I mean, being in the mortgage business, and a lot of people when they have worked with brokers or whatever tend to feel it's quite transactional. They don't feel like a particular connection or whatever. How does your organization? How do you build connections with your clients so they don't feel like this is just a transaction, if you like?
John, that's actually a great question. You know why? Because your boy Andrew has a psychology background. So I love sales. I don't know if it's in like the Russell DNA, but it's more the schmooze, getting to know people, consultative sales. I don't like selling a product. I like holding somebody's hand, assisting them on the journey, and a lot of education. I come from a long line of teachers, and I have a psychology degree. I have a master's in it. So I took that to the mortgage side. When I got in the business, I actually started at the crash. I did one subprime loan, just one. It was pretty cool, but only did one. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, this market is very difficult. And we got into, from doing refinance business, we got into doing purchase business.
Right.
No one taught me how to do a purchase consultation or pitch, if you want to call that in sales. And I realized after doing a very quick, doing it a multitude of times in a lot of different ways, the best way to do it is imagine it's a therapy session. Imagine a counseling session. They're coming there. There's anxiety. Typically, it's something that's outside of their realm of specialty. So hold their hand, talk slow, talk to them as a client and not, a number or an acronym. John, in our business, there's DTIs, there's LTVs, there's all
Yep.
these acronyms, right? And the consumer, LOEs, LOXs, consumers like, Andrew, what the hell does that mean, dude?
Mhm.
So we take a consultative approach. That's what we do. We hold the client's hand, we befriend them, we make them feel comfortable. We have long consultations, and we really slow it down to make them feel comfortable. That's been very successful, and that's my psychology background at play. I've also competed and spoke to clients after they had a consultation with one of our competitors, and they say, "Oh my God, Andrew, your team, went into the details. Like they got to know me. It was a long consultation. I felt so comfortable." Where the first person was like, "Hey, I'm going to send you out an app, fill it out, and I'll call you back." And it was just like so robotic. And I'm sure now it's going to be replaced with AI agents and various things. So, I think the lack of business background is okay for mortgage because number one, I geek out on mortgage guidelines. So I'm sure eventually ChatGPT will take over. But there's a lot, even with that, there's a lot of stuff in mortgage where if something goes wrong, what do you do? I definitely enjoy that. And that's really the always finding a way to get things done. Second place is first loser. So just being resourceful. But outside of that, with the client and even with realtors alike, realtor partners are who refer
Yep.
us most of our business. It's taking that slow down consultative approach that really seems to be enjoyed by the market only because what's going to separate me from the guy down the street? It's the relationship building, it's the comfort and the experience, making this experience an enjoyable one we can celebrate instead of something to pull your hair out.
Yeah, and let's face it. I mean, the mortgage process, especially since the housing crisis and all of that, and then all the regulation came. It just has become more and more complex, and the amount of paperwork and all that. It can be quite intimidating. Particularly maybe for first time people getting their first mortgage. It can be quite an intimidating process.
It can be. We deploy the keep it simple strategy for
Mhm.
mortgage. We don't ask for things that aren't needed. I've worked with over 10,000 people, so I just have that ability that I know what's necessary. And it's not about doing the process and it's an easy, efficient process all the time. It's more so what is the client doing to potentially try to shoot themselves in the foot to
Mhm.
affect their purchase. So that's really where we make sure that they don't do the thing that will affect the purchase more so than just explaining how to get it done because clients get married, clients deposit cash, clients spend the money in their bank and wonder, where it all kind of went wrong. Clients
Right.
change their jobs, so John, you're obviously, self-employed entrepreneur. Some clients work as a W-2 employee and right before closing, they're like, hey, One time I had someone work at a restaurant and they were a W-2 employee, and it turns out they were engaged to the owner. So a week before it closed, the owner gave the restaurant to the fiance. He gave it. So what does the lender do? To your point, they run searches. Now the borrower is an owner, which means self-employed. They don't have a
Yep.
two-year history. Now their loan is
Hmm.
declined. So they ended up having to give the restaurant back. It was a bit of a drama. My point is, I've seen so many things sitting in this chair, and the consultative approach and just being resourceful. There's so much stuff that goes on. It's not like, and I always tell clients, it's not like, hey, I want to get a Lexus. I'll go to 3 Lexus dealerships
Yeah.
and get the cheapest. Oftentimes, if not most of the time, who you work with will make the biggest difference. Because to your point, mortgage process still in America is very frustrating and convoluted.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, there's these things that can just come out of left field, or things that can be discovered during the process, or whatever. So having somebody like yourself who can problem solve, and I think that's where the value, really comes in. And that's obviously, I would say, part of your strategy, why you get referrals, why people come back and work with you, is because you're there to solve those problems.
Yeah, we've had clients that we've spoken to, and look, somebody in mortgage in America somewhere will do it for a dollar cheaper or for a
Sure.
couple pennies less at closing. Unfortunately, and it's a rate shop environment, so I get it. You as the consumer don't want to use someone that's more expensive, but there's a lot that goes into mortgage. What lenders are you working with? Do they have access to actual guidelines for the government or their own overlays? Meaning, if something is allowed, do they internally not allow it and not really tell you? What type of team do they amass on their appraiser side? What type of underwriting do they do? Is it very stringent or conservative? So there's a lot that goes into the mortgage process. It's just oftentimes the client doesn't know that because, again, typically they get a car and they go to multiple
Mhm.
dealerships. And what's the big deal? If I want to get a truck, I'll just get the cheapest. It's the same truck, right? It's not the same in mortgage, although it kind of ends up in the same spot. Who's kind of doing the whole process throughout? Who's actually facilitating it? That's the rage.
Mhm. And like you said, you get a lot of your business from your agent partners. And so what do you so that is something that you have to build a trust with them, so they're like, you become their go-to person. So what are some of what are some of the reasons why your agent partners select you as their go-to people?
Yeah, so I used to love the show House. You ever see the show House?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I love that show. So, like he'll be out and like back then it's all beepers, right? The beeper goes
Mhm.
off, all the doctors run back. So we're on call doctors. So that you could be the greatest in the game. But if you're not available Friday at 4 or 5 p.m. up until Monday morning, in between that is crunch time. That's especially now going into the spring market.
Mhm.
So always being available is important because people see houses on the weekend. They have questions on the weekend. They want that doctor, that plastic surgeon available for questioning on the weekend. So we're always available, quote unquote. That's a huge plus, number one. Not some of the other things, number two, specifically, are that we are the type of mortgage company where if we say yes, we don't just throw it against the wall and hope it sticks. We're a very big bat 1,000 type. So in other words, in baseball, if you bat 900, I don't even, what are you, a trillionaire? There's not even a word. But in mortgage, if you bat 900, that means 1 out of 10 of your clients, you made a mistake. If you make a
Mm.
mistake, that's really bad. That realtor wasted all their time on the weekend showing houses. That client emotionally got tied into that house. Then they get declined. And if it was the mortgage representative's fault, that's a really bad look. And the problem? The problem is there's no real consequence for that. It's like, sorry, and they get their money back, especially in New
Mhm.
York. So the fact that we have such high, it's called pre-approval integrity. When we give a stamp of RCG Mortgage and Andrew Russell, yes, we bat 1,000. And realtors love that. It's all fun and games until something happens with the client and everybody's upset, especially in the digital age where you can give a 0-star review, which would be super detrimental. That's something that our realtor partners like. Number one, that we're available. And number two, knock on wood, we don't make mistakes.
Yeah, yeah, and like you said, I mean, it's such you may have done thousands of these, but it could be the client's first mortgage. It's very emotional. There's a lot of emotion tied into it, a lot of fear and trepidation. So having somebody that they can rely, and somebody who's going to treat them like it is, like you're doing your first mortgage.
So think about it. Mortgage professionals that do very well can make a lot of money. They can make six
Mhm.
figures, they can make seven figures. Maybe somewhere there's an eight-figure earner. We could do very well. So, you do an analogy of a heart surgeon. Now imagine that heart surgeon, 20% of his patients don't make it. There's not even an analogy, right? That's not even a thing.
Yep.
You have there are instances where something happens once in a blue, and they have insurance for it and all that. But
Yeah.
imagine as a whole, the medical field that existed. Because in mortgage, depending on where you go, who you speak with, that could be a thing. 1 out of 5, 1 out of 10 clients from a specific mortgage originator, something could go wrong and they made a mistake. And again, there's no consequence. I couldn't, again, it's a bad analogy, but I can't imagine the medical field. Maybe lose your license, maybe malpractice, maybe go to jail. I'm not really sure. In our
Mhm.
business, that doesn't exist. So it's super, super important and prudent that consumers do the diligence on who they work with, check out their Google reviews, make sure if the realtor refers them, try to get to the reason why. Is it because they're so good, or there's a lot that goes into the mortgage side. But those are the important things for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, thank you so much, Andrew. This has been great. Andrew shared some great wisdom. All of Andrew's information will be below this video. But before we go, please do remind people about what you do.
Yes, I'm Andrew Russell. I'm owner and founder of RCG Mortgage. We're a residential mortgage broker company. Without a doubt, the rage. You can find us at I am Andrew Russell, two S's, two L's, or rcgmortgage.com.
Excellent. Well, I encourage you to go check it out. It's whatever you do in life, whether it is buying a house or getting a mortgage or whatever. It's always best to work with somebody who you trust and can build a relationship with, is because it's probably not going to be the only time you need a mortgage. Because especially in these days, people move around a lot more than they used to. So, thanks again, Andrew. Thank you for watching, listening, and I will see you all again very soon. Thank you.